All right. 3, 2, 1. And we're live. How you doing, friends? Ernie here with the 0 Days to Expiration podcast. And this is episode number 83. Yes, we are out of sync. Last week was episode 84 because I skipped 83. And we still have that elusive episode number 70 that has not been found. But trust me, it will be found. Today, we're going to talk about a concept called probability of touch. Now, you've probably heard of probability of profit, or what some people call probability of being in the money. And those are interesting concepts. You can see it on your trading platform, particularly Thinkorswim. You can actually set up your options chain so you can see probability of profit and probability of touch. And let's get to some definitions and why we prefer probability of touch over probability of profit. And the main reason, I'll skip to the chase here. The main reason why we prefer probability of touch as opposed to probability of profit is that probability of profit, also known as POP, that is a measure at expiration. So in other words, there's the expectation when you're taking into consideration this probability that you're going to take your trade all the way to expiration. Now, we're doing day trades. We're trading the very last day of expiration. We may take that trade in the morning, maybe at noontime, in the afternoon, and we want to be in and out as quickly as we can with the maximum return that we can. There are, on occasion, that we can hold a trade right into expiration. And those are the good days because we know that when we're doing that, we're coming close to pinning a trade. In other words, the price has moved very close to our short strikes. That's where we achieve our maximum profit. And so on those days, yeah, we want to be holding as long as we possibly can, and then perhaps get out right at the very end of the market or hold it right into expiration. And that's great. When those days happen, we say hallelujah. We love those days. But they are the minority of days. Really, time, while it's on your side in terms of theta, because we're generally putting on trades that are theta positive, vega negative, time is on your side for the most part, if you're in the right position. But if you're not in the right position, time is not on your side. Time is your enemy. So you have to weigh those two things. So probability of profit, let's get to it. POP. That is the odds that you will achieve at least 1 cent of profit by expiration. So when you look at it on your trading platform, that's what you're looking at. You're saying, okay, I'm going to be somewhere inside of the profit tent of whatever strategy that I'm using, or actually it's about that specific strike. And I'll make it, I'm hoping, or the odds are that I'll make at least 1 penny of profit at expiration. Now, we're not really concerned about 1 penny of profit, to tell you the truth. And so probability of POP is not a useful measure for us. Now, probability of touch is that I will be profitable, or I will hit that strike price sometime during the trading session. And that is more realistic. Now, most people are looking at these two things in the context of perhaps doing a credit spread or something on that order, where they start in the money. And so they're measuring their odds that they will stay in the money for as long as possible. So probability of touch for them, or probability of profit for them, is the odds that they're going to lose. For us, it's the odds that we're going to win. Now, probability of touch, on the other hand, is a very, very different thing for us. We start our trades out of the money. And let me explain. Most people are putting on credit spreads or butterflies or iron condors, and they put these trades on with the idea that they're going to make very, very wide spreads to try to increase their probability of staying in the money for as long as they possibly can. And hopefully the profit will, or the theta will increase enough before the day is over, or potentially they'll stay there the whole day and they will end up profiting. And that's all well and good. You can put on a very high probability trade and potentially make some money if you stay inside of your spread, both the left hand and the right hand spread, and you stay there because you've put on some very low delta trade or spreads, and maybe you put them on and they give you a 90 or 95% chance that you're going to stay inside of there. Great. But what happens in those cases where you move outside, where you challenge one of those spreads or the risk that you're taking? Or what happens if you start the trade off and you're sitting on top of your profit dome, and then price starts moving towards one of those in-the-money strikes, that strike that you're trying to stay inside? You're immediately in the negative. And you could be in the negative by a great deal, depending on what type of odds that you've chosen. And like I said, most people choose very high probability odds, so they pay the price for that. The price is that they have to sit there anxiety-ridden, chewing their nails, hoping that they're going to stay inside of the profit tent of their iron condor or inside of their credit spread. That's the life that most people are choosing. And the odds that they're taking are always asymmetric, but asymmetric against them. In other words, they're choosing high probability trades, but for that, what they give up for choosing a high probability trade is anxiety in the form of huge risk for a very small amount of profit. So to guard against this, what most traders will do is they'll set stops in their trade. So if they get too close to challenging the risk side of their trade, they will stop out, and they might set some kind of basic strategy that says, I will endure up to 3 times the risk of my potential credit that I'm going to try to receive. So let's say that they're trying to receive $100 of credit. If they move towards their risk side and they go $300 in the negative, they will stop out and accept that loss, because if they went all the way to the max risk, if it were a 90% probability trade, they could potentially lose $900 or $1,000, and they don't want to do that. Now, on the converse of that, let's say that they stay inside of their profit tent. They want to get out of it fairly quickly. Because of this risk that they're taking. They don't want to stop out, and they don't want to be underwater all the time. So as soon as they achieve 50% of their potential profit or potential credit, they get out. So in other words, they're not taking a 10%, they're not going for 10% of their risk. They're going for 5%. Now, if you start working out these odds, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that you're always going for a tiny little bit of profit, always in constant anxiety that you're going to either stop out or hit your max risk for a tiny little bit of profit. And if you're trading something like futures, then the commission that you're paying starts eating into that total commission or that total credit that you're going after. And this is a really tough way to trade. And it's the way that most zero DTE traders trade. So I don't like those odds. I don't like the idea of probability of profit, because it doesn't give me any confidence that I'm going to feel good at any time during my trade. Only if price stays stagnant, right smack dab in the middle of that iron condor, do I have any kind of confidence or feel good. And those are very, very rare moments. I would say that there's probably a 10 or 15% chance that you're going to stay close enough to the center of that condor during the majority of the time that you're in that trade that you feel comfortable. The rest of the time, you don't. Like I said, anxiety ridden, biting your nails, just hoping that price will stay stable. When does price stay stable? It never does. So what we do is we do what I call the inversion of risk. And instead of relying on probability of profit, we rely on something called probability of touch. Because we're not really worried about or concerned or even chasing after getting inside of that profit tent. If we do, great. And we love those cases. And if that's going to happen, I want to get really paid off for it, big time. But if we don't, then I don't want to have any of that anxiety at all. As a matter of fact, I don't want to feel any pain. So what we do is we take those same iron condors or butterflies. In our case, we choose a butterfly because it has better profit growth characteristics and better risk to reward, and we push them out of the money. And so we enter that trade with a complete inversion of risk. Instead of taking a 10-part risk to 1-part reward, we'll take a 1-part risk to 10 parts reward. So then our risk that we take is very small. It's never an issue for us. If we lose, we lose. If we win, we're often winning multiples of our risk. And from a probability of touch point of view, we only need to be near the profit tent. If we can get close to the short strikes, that's going to potentially give us a 5 to 6 to 10 times our risk that we're taking on profit if we were to hold it into the end of the day. And that happens every once in a while. We call it pinning the trade, or what I like to say, pinning the tail on the donkey. So what we're really concerned about then is probability of touch of one of the long strikes, not just the short strikes, but the long strikes. And so that's how we usually judge our trade, because if you look at the profit dome as it grows, we can literally profit without ever entering the profit tent. Now, for the other 0DTE traders, they would never profit in that situation. They are hoping that they stay within that tiny, tiny little zone near their short strikes, and they stay centered. If they move outside of that, it starts weighing on them. For us, we never feel that. In fact, we're looking to profit even while we're outside, completely outside of the profit tent of that strategy. So you see that it's a complete inversion of risk, a complete inversion of feeling, of profiting. And with their method, they only profit in a very narrow range. In our method, we profit in a very wide range. In their method, they're always going after a very tiny slice of the potential credit that they're trying to go after. In our method, we're going after a wide spectrum of credit that we're going after. In their method, they have a cap on their profit, and it's challenged by the amount of, if they're trading futures in particular, it's challenged by the amount of commission that they have compared to the amount of credit they're going after. In ours, we're never challenged. In fact, our wins are multiples of the commissions that we're going after. So while when they get, say, a 10% turn on their risk, they feel that was a great day. That was a fantastic day. Let's say it's even 25%. They think that's a fantastic day. On our trades, we're looking at 50, 100, 150 as being a normal day, a regular day. And on good days, we're looking at 200%, 500%, 1,000% return on the good days. It's a complete inversion of the problem. Where they're always anxiety-ridden, we are never or hardly ever anxiety-ridden. I don't know how you get anxiety-ridden over the fact that you're betting a tiny little amount, practically nothing. Now, There is one caveat to this. Their probability of winning, or their win rate, might be a little bit higher, but the amount that they win is much lower. The probable outcome, their profit outcome over the long term, is lower. Ours is much higher, and we're never in that state of anxiety. So we use probability of touch to just tell us what are our odds of coming close to the profit tent as our potential outcome for profit. And not only is it better, but even when we're outside of the profit tent, early on in the trade, we are returning multiples on our risk that we're taking. So instead of going after 5% or 10% as our max, our minimum is usually 50 or 100 or 150. Actually, our average ends up being about 150% of the risk that we take on. So the commissions that we pay on futures are never a factor in the returns that we take. Now, there are those cases with very small accounts where you start getting squeezed a little bit and you don't have the same kind of flexibility that you do with a much larger account in terms of how often that you want to try to go for a deep in the money type situation. Playing a strategy that is out of the money really requires that you have a fairly good knowledge of directional bias, that you're going to get somewhere close to the profit tent within a period of time. And we increase those odds through our analysis of the markets using volume profile and getting us in the ballpark. But the fact is that it is still a completely different paradigm. You're never really anxious about your trade. You're not worried about going deep into the day in order to profit just a minimal amount, 5 or 10%. It's the exact opposite. We can go early in the day and look at returning an order of magnitude. Just think of that. An order of magnitude more early in the day. And if we go deeper in the day, if we happen to move into our profit tent, several orders of magnitude more than the other 0DTE traders are ever going after. It is a complete different game on a different level. That is the difference between going after probability of profit or probability of touch. Probability of touch is our friend. Probability of touch in the other 0DTE traders is their enemy. In fact, probability of profit is also their enemy, to tell you the truth. So there you go. There's the difference. There's the difference between 0-DTE.com and the other 0DTE without the dash, or any other method that's out there. Let's see. Do we have... Nobody in the peanut gallery today, so no questions. So hopefully that illustrates the difference between the way 0-DTE does 0DTE, or 0 days to expiration, and the other services do theirs. They are anxiety-ridden, going after tiny profit. We have no anxiety, going after literally orders of magnitude greater profit. So probability of touch is our friend, and it is their enemy. All right, that's all I've got to say. Peace to you all, and we'll see you next time. By the way, today was a good illustration of exactly what I'm talking about. Very early on in the day, prior to noontime, we knew that Jerome Powell was going to give a speech, as well as some other Fed governors, Fed Governor Bostic. And when they came on, initially during the day, I felt that we were going to have a bullish move. And so we played that. We never achieved or came near our profit tent. However, we came close enough that we're able to get out early with at least a 50% return. Now, consider that. We get out early on a 50% return, where they're never going for more than a 5 and at best a 10% return if they're staying in all day. So we got out early with 10 times what they normally get out, staying in all day. And we get out knowing that, hey, things are going to turn around or potentially turn around, take our profit, get out. The Fed governor and the chairman came on. The market immediately dropped. If they were in that trade, it dropped so fast that they would either have hit their 3 times stop and lost 3 times the credit that they were going after, or, as most zero DTE traders in that ilk hold on thinking that, hey, it's a sharp drop, I think I'll hold a little bit, they would have been challenged all the way to their max risk and potentially lost weeks of profits. That, again, is the difference between other zero DTE traders and zero-dte.com. If you'd like to try out our service, go to zero-dte.com/try. That's TRY. And for 4 weeks, you'll get an education like no other, and you'll really see the difference between the way we practice 0 days to expiration and the way others limp through it. All right, that's all I've got to say. Peace to you all. We'll see you next time. And stream.